Alright, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be debating on the idea that whether or not artificial intelligence is impossible. Before we actually get into the crux of the debate, we have to go through a bunch of definitions so that no one in the room is confused as to what exactly we're talking about. First off, what is a true strong AI? In our definition, a true strong AI is a binary, consistent machine capable of doing any intellectual task, such as understanding, such as empathy, that a human can. And it can also convince a human that it itself is also human. What are we going to be talking about when we talk about the human mind? In this debate, the human mind is going to be seen as a consistent state machine. A consistent state machine, what do we mean? We mean consistency as in it's not self-contradictory. As in, given a rule, it does not contradict itself. A neuron can only fire forward. Alright, what do we mean by state? A state we mean is a condition or mode of being. As in, a human being mad, a human needing to go to the washroom, that is a state, and that is what we mean, essentially. What do we mean by artificial? By artificial, we mean man-made, as in not found in nature. And that's about all we're going to go into that. Okay, so first off, before I actually go into my arguments, we can't prove anything exists, ergo we can't prove that artificial intelligence can possibly exist, therefore we win the debate, but let's actually get into the actual arguments. The Chinese room. This is a thought experiment. Put an American into a Chinese room. Into the Chinese room. He has no understanding of Chinese, he doesn't know what language he's talking about. All he's given is a list of symbols and instructions. Now, Betty here is going to be outside the room, slipping notes under the door. On the notes are going to be a bunch of symbols. On these symbols is going to be what the question is. Now, all the man has to do is read the instructions, go look at the symbols, and write down the symbols and output the answer. Essentially, that is what a computer does. It follows a list of instructions in order to actually do something. It does not understand what it's doing. It does not understand why it's doing it. All it does is follow a list of instructions. John, spitting. Now, all it does is follow a list of instructions. In that way, a computer will never have understanding. In that way, a true, strong AI will never exist. Now, our second argument is Gödel's theorem. Go.
Okay, Gödel's incompleteness theorem is basically a mathematical theorem that states that given a complete system, a complete consistent system, it is always impossible to completely describe it. Meaning, for example, you have a game, take a basketball game. You have the rules of the game that will describe the game itself, yeah? True, but that's actually not quite true, because then the team players are going to do something you're not going to be able to describe just using the rules of the game. Say, for example, never pass the ball to the opposing team. Yes, it's a ridiculous idea, but it never happens. Why? You can't explain that with the rules of the game. So then you need a new set of rules. Take, for example, I don't know, rules on teamwork. Then rules on teamwork, and then the rules of the game will be able to describe the game itself.
But we must go deeper.
But then that same set of rules is going to be subject to Gödel's inconsistent theorem. That means it's not going to be able to completely describe what's happening on the game. In the same way, you can say even if you get to map all the neurons in the brain, which is considered a solution for a strong AI, it's going to be impossible to completely describe what it's doing. In this way, strong AI is impossible because it will never be exactly the same as a human being. It will never be able to replicate what a human being is capable of doing in the same way.
Alright, our third argument is that every machine is modeled as a finite state system. As in, a machine can only do one thing. A human, on the other hand, can be hungry, he can be mad, he can be angry, he can be happy, all at the same time, and therefore a human can be modeled as a finite state machine. As an infinite state machine. My mistake. A machine is a finite state machine. Now, infinite state machine. Now, how do you actually model a finite state machine into an infinite state machine? You can't. The only thing that'll let you do it is infinite memory, because you need all that memory to store the infinite states. A human has that because the way a memory works in humans is not replicable in machines. The way it works is that a neuron fires. A neuron can fire as many times at once. On the other hand, memory inside machines is a latch, as in it's a binary that's 1 or 0. So in that way, there is a hardware limitation as to how a computer can become an infinite state machine. It's the obvious problem of not having enough memory. Once again, you need an infinite amount of that. Okay, so what have we talked about today? We talked about the Chinese room, as in a computer is never going to properly understand what you're doing. It's only going to follow a set of instructions, therefore not having complete understanding, therefore not really being a strong AI. Secondly, we're going to talk about Gödel's theorem. Time just threw me off. We're going to talk about Gödel's theorem, in which you're never going to be able to properly model a human mind inside a machine, because there's always going to be a set of rules. You cannot model consciousness because there are no rules for consciousness. Third, and lastly, we have the finite state machine, which is a hardware limitation, which is not enough memory. And one last thing before I go, this entire debate is pointless because existence, we can't prove it anyway. We're done.
Hey, good.
Not 5 minutes.
Okay, what's 5 minutes? What's like 7.
Is this good? Can you hear me in the back? Good? No? You shook your head, so I feel like you can. Anyway. I'd rather you understand me, so I'm going to take my time speaking.
I have way too many things to say.
Right. Humans. We have existed as a species for roughly 50,000 years. Roughly 10,000 years ago, we figured out agriculture. After that, we built cities and began developing metal tools, all leading to our current complex society. Our existence as a species is not defined by how we adapt to our environment, but how we force our environment to adapt to us. In the past 100 years, technologies have moved exponentially, allowing us to fly to the moon and even manipulate atoms. We are advancing so quickly it's almost impossible to tell what kind of technology will be available for us even 30 years from now. Unlike our opponents, we believe that the question of the possibility of artificial intelligence is not a matter of if, but when. I'm sure we can all agree that humans are intelligent. But how did we come to be so? Millions of years of evolution led the first single-celled organisms into becoming all the life that exists on Earth now, including us. I ask that you open your mind to the possibility that artificial intelligence is not restricted to computers or coding, but that you consider the possibility of humanity creating intelligence organically, playing God, if you will. Think to yourself for a moment. If a completely random process such as evolution can create intelligent life in a finite amount of time, can we not do the same? Can't we, being the intelligent creatures we are, mimic that process? Surely adding a little order, logic, and organization will speed things up a little. The answer is yes, we can. In 2010, J. Craig Venture Institute researchers successfully constructed the first self-replicating synthetic bacterial cell. Dr. Hutchison, a researcher working on the project, is quoted as saying, "To me, the most remarkable thing about our synthetic cell is that its genome was designed in the computer and brought to life through chemical synthesis without using any pieces of natural DNA. They proved that the genome can be designed using computers, made in the laboratory via chemical processes, and transplanted into recipient cells to produce new ones controlled by the synthetic genome. Man-made DNA. Artificial DNA. Much like how a computer is coding to dictate what it does or how it does it, humans and other living organisms have their own DNA or genome. Our DNA is the backbone of our behaviors, our emotions, our actions, and our intelligence. With its blueprints and the experiences of our lives, we become who we are now, intelligent organisms. If we can artificially produce DNA, similar to the research done at the J. Craig Venture Institute, we could produce even more complex life as humanity progresses. After we begin creating complex life, the only direction to go is towards intelligent life. Another factor in the development of biologically produced artificial intelligence is the Human Genome Project. Completed in 2003, the HGP identified all the genes in human DNA. It's approximately 20,000 to 25,000. Determined the sequence of the roughly 3 billion chemical base pairs that make up human DNA, and stored all this information in databases, among other things. The human genome is the basis for what we are, and answers the question of why we are intelligent at a molecular level. With its information, we can modify potential synthetic DNA to carry genes that are prominent in intelligent humans.
Alright, so first I'm going to talk about emotion, and like the emotions that we as humans feel. And one must understand that there are, of course, evolutionary adaptations, since because of natural selection, we've come to live in a society and we need emotions in order to survive. Things like fear and pain, for example, serve an obvious purpose, which is to defend us from danger. And love and sexual attraction are in order to have offspring and also be able to raise them and give them a better chance of survival. And anger and jealousy also can serve the purpose of helping us appropriate certain resources that we might need in order to survive. And so these are all instincts that we acquired over time. So consciousness can also be thought of as another instinct that we have. One that would allow us to control the other instincts that I mentioned beforehand. This would be because in, let's say, a situation in which you would be in danger, yet you know that overcoming the danger would give you a better chance of survival, you could use your consciousness to overcome fear, for example, and have it pay off for you. And so naturally, a control over basic instincts is something that natural selection would favor in us, because we need them have a better life and better chance of survival. So we know that emotions are exhibited in animals regardless of their upbringing. In other words, emotions don't have to be taught to us in order for us to show them. And so this means that they are, of course, in our DNA. So we know that the algorithm for the emotions that we feel, for this consciousness, is also present in our DNA. So it's only a matter of extracting the information, because the algorithm, of course, exists. And it's also quantifiable, or will be in the future. So all we need to do is copy it and implement it. So again, as I said, consciousness is simply another instinct that we have that allows us to control other instincts and helps give us a better chance of survival.
So, as you can see, humanity is already on the path to creating artificial intelligent life. The answer to whether or not artificial intelligence is possible is a resounding yes. To believe otherwise is to embrace ignorance. And we all know engineers are the opposite. Thank you.